Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond Ray. Today it's me and Ginger. We don't have a guest host, but we did have a ton of help from Fran Wong, who is a previous guest we had. She wrote the outline with us. And our guest today is Angie Kim. Angie is the design manager of beauty at Helen of Troy. Prior to that, she founded and ran her own company making handbags and has also worked in the consultancy environment at IDEO. Angie, thank you so much for being here to have a conversation with us about beauty and the products of the beauty industry. We're really grateful to have you.
Hi, thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
We wanted to start by just understanding your role at Helen of Troy right now and how your relationship with the idea of beauty sort of shaped your path to lead you into that role.
So right now, like you had just mentioned, I'm the Global Design and Innovation Manager for Beauty Tools at Helen of Troy. So we are like a house of brands. So there's a lot of brands. There's Hydro Flask, Osprey, Oxo, Revlon, Dry Bar, Curlsmith. There's more. But I primarily work on the beauty side. So with Revlon, Curlsmith, Hot Tools, and we design all of the physical devices coming out of those brands. So any dryers, any stylers, new innovation in that field. And these are products that I'm assuming that we probably have all touched at some point. And so, yeah, that's what I do at Helen of Troy. I've been there for almost a year, and it's actually a year next week.
Oh, congrats.
Congrats.
So I'm fairly new. Thank you. So I'm fairly new to at least Helen of Troy, but I feel like I've been in the category of beauty for quite a while. And my career has kind of moved intuitively in that direction. So when I started my industrial design journey, it wasn't like I want to go into beauty. It was totally just, I have a family who has kind of an affinity for aesthetics or something on the creative side. So like my uncle, he's an interior designer. My other uncle's an art professor. My aunt is an artist. My parents are actually small, like business entrepreneurs, like cafes and restaurants, but they're pretty creative minded as well, I would say. So I kind of grew up in that environment where my family really had an eye or kind of a liking for objectively beautiful things or expressing themselves creatively. So it kind of felt natural to kind of go into design. But my parents were actually pushing me to go into biology. So I had, in high school, when I was applying for colleges, I had applied to some colleges for biology. But what I had really said to my mom is, I really want to go into art. And she said, you can't make money off of art. So you need to choose something else. And at that time, sounds funny because there's so many different design, disciplines now that we know of. But back then, graphic design was like the only design profession that I had heard of. So I had applied to San Jose State, where I knew that I had heard that they had a great design program. And you can enter without having this like full portfolio. So I started there in the graphic design program. And a year into it, I actually had met a friend who was in the industrial design program.
Oh, cool.
Which I had never heard of. I was like, what is industrial design? And she's like, we design three-dimensional things. I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah. She goes, I know. She goes, I never heard of it too. But she was designing this orb, and it was like, a three-dimensional object. And it really blew my mind because I was like, well, that makes sense. That's what all of our furniture are, physical objects that we interact with every day. Somebody has to, have designed that. And so I didn't realize there was a whole profession. And when I found out, I was like, I want to switch over the next year, which is what I did. And I think also what I found interesting was that program had traditionally been known as being dominated by men. It currently was. And even the program, it actually had a fair number of women, I would say, but it was definitely heavier on the male side. And so there was a little bit of me that was like, well, why aren't women more in that field? And women could be equally as great of a designer, industrial designer, as men could be. So there was a little bit of that kind of, I guess you could say, like ego and rebellion in me that was like, I want to prove that we can be as great.
I love that.
Anyways, that was, my start into industrial design. And ever since then, it's been kind of this intuitive journey of like what feels right with my values and principles, my intentions. And, I started off at IDEO after college, and that felt right because it was all about like really thinking about the user and the human and what their needs were. And they told amazing stories, and it just felt right to kind of apply. And then I got in, and then from there, I moved to India for a little bit, and I was completely immersed in craft. And so then I had this itch to kind of make things with my hands again, which is why I left IDEO and then started my handbag business. And then in parallel at that time, I was working a lot with female founded companies or products oriented for women. And then that was really interesting. And I've kind of just slowly found my way to Helen of Troy, where I'm designing products pretty much focused on women's beauty, I guess, in a larger sense. But I think it actually goes a lot deeper in terms of like what the purpose behind those tools are.
So was there kind of a ecosystem of when you started consulting and saying like, I want to do all of this work for startups that work on products for women, women-centric things? Was that kind of like something that you had to seek out, or you get like a reputation going and those types of companies are attracted to you? How does that really happen?
I'm one of those people that really believe in like universal energy, but on a practical sense, I think that there was a period kind of when I was maybe like 10 to 15 years ago where there was more women who were recognizing that women were underserved and there were needs that weren't being addressed properly. And so it just happened that these women would come together and create companies. And who better to design a product for a woman other than a woman who really understands what those needs could be? So they were looking for an industrial designer that happened to be a woman, right? Because like, if a product is a breast pump, let's say, then who else would know than a woman what it feels like to have something on your breast and what that feels like, what that form should be, what that experience should be like. So it was a little bit like they were searching for a female industrial designer. I happened to be one within that kind of area. And I was also just interested in women's products. Like it just kind of felt right.
Yeah.
Like everything, I guess if an opportunity is presented, it's more of, for me, I guess every kind of choice I've made, it's like, does that feel right for who I am? Like, does that line up with my principles, my values? And I felt like all of these different companies, that I worked with, it just felt like it was the perfect collaboration and partnership. So they were looking for female. And I also felt like I get what you are wanting to accomplish and I would love to be a part of it. So it was kind of, in a sense, like universally, we kind of got magnetically pulled together.
Yeah, that's really cool.
You're really showing like what we talk about on here a lot, which is how much just representation in our field impacts the products that get to come out of it, right?
Totally.
But whether that be, any sort of representation. But I think that even though, to be a good designer, you have to be good at interviewing and sort of like becoming the expert in the field. We have to have people that are just like already the right fit, that are actually like doing our profession, right? It's really, really important. I think I'm curious, like the breast pump is something that you had mentioned to us. Do you remember the products that you worked on in that time when you were really getting to like make your own path?
So when I left IDEO and I had started my leather handbag business, I had also at that time met a company called Moxley. And there were 3 co-founders, female co-founders, who were all fabulous and like just so motivated and so focused on creating this new breast pump. And so previously, historically, breast pumps were essentially, a suction cup, like a cone, and like a container that you screw on. And so what they wanted to do was change the form of that so that when you put it underneath your shirt just kind of glides over it and it looks like it's just an extension of your natural breast. And it had a low profile, so really slim bottle. And so when you had it under your shirt, you didn't see this big round or square or whatever form that might be, bulky bottle kind of peeking out through your clothing. All you saw was this kind of really naturally shaped cone, or suction cup. And with this low profile bottle that kind of, it just kind of glazed over that. So this was before Willow and LV, or a lot of those like kind of portable breast pumps came out into the market. They really spearheaded thinking about women and like how they wanted to feel when they're breast pumping, because often women are working moms. And so you're out in the public, you're maybe at work, you might be in transit, you might be doing grocery shopping, you might be cleaning your house, whatever it may be. You don't want to feel like you have this huge robot attached to you. Yeah. And I thought they were so great. There was a business engineer and kind of a design and user experience. Those 3 co-founders, they kind of hit the main groups and were just completely devoted, and eventually sold their business to Medela, which was kind of been one of the more larger breast pump companies.
Super cool. Is it out on the market? Do you know?
It came out into the market, and I don't know what happened. Once they got absorbed into Medela, I think they kind of closed their business, but I think that the idea lived on in other ways. Cool. And then since then, these other breast pump companies like Willow and LV and Lilu, which is another breast pump company that I worked with quite a bit, are definitely kind of leading the design in breast pumps in kind of this whole new, really interesting way.
Absolutely.
We're going to get into this a little more later, but you mentioned the other roles, business and engineering and all that had to be aligned on this concept. How much of a difference is it that like all the disciplines in the business are kind of like having the same North Star as design in terms of enabling you as a designer to realize a better product or like empower you? What difference does that make?
Huge. First of all, you have 3 females and you're creating a product centered around women. And you can kind of cover the bases in terms of expertise and like product development. It just makes the whole process go a lot smoother because there's almost like a line you don't even need to discuss because everyone just kind of gets it. Versus if you have different genders who may not have had experience in that field or like you just don't know what that feels like, it's like you have to get them on that page of understanding before you get to that work. Here, it's like everyone just gets it. So if everyone can kind of own their own discipline, it's like getting to the goal is just much easier and more fluid and smooth. So I think it's a huge, I mean, even at Helena Troy, we have a lot of female leaders. A lot of females are weighing in on, the decisions that we make on kind of our roadmap. And it makes gelling together much more fluid when we all just get it. It's like that unspoken thing is just there, the common understanding.
You don't have to like convince anyone or do like a lot of extra educating.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So I think maybe in the spirit of talking about like how informing others is part of this work, let's maybe level set a little on the ideas around beauty culture. I think that we have a lot of like implicit ideas and understanding around it, but we don't always like just directly lay it out there and define them. So when you talk about beauty, how would you define that industry and that idea of working on beauty?
Okay, first of all, that's a great question. And it's really on a personal as well as a professional really resonates with me because I think beauty has evolved so much, especially over the last couple of decades, at least from my personal experience, maybe it's more the past couple of decades. So I'm Korean American and I come from a culture that has incredibly high beauty ideals and standards. And I think it's generational and it's deeply embedded. And I grew up from a little girl just getting a lot of criticism from my family because I didn't have certain Western features or I wasn't slim like the rest of my family, or I didn't have, I don't know, like perfect skin or big eyes, or I don't know. There's a whole list of these insane standards that are considered beautiful. And if you don't have them, you're not beautiful. That's how I heard it growing up. And that's so deep in me. It's deep in my mother. It's deep in my grandmother. And I still think it's present in our today. But what I love is that I think the last 2 decades or so, it's really become much more inclusive and so much broader in how we view beauty. I remember so vividly when I was working at IDEO, someone had presented the Dove's, I think it's called Rare Beauty or Real Beauty campaign. It showed this woman and it was just like, she wasn't a model. She just like was selected somehow. And they took a photograph of her. And then it showed the whole process after the photograph was taken and all that after editing, whether it was in Photoshop or some other kind of After Effects. They were like making her neck slimmer and taller. They were like making her eyes bigger and wider, fixing her hair so it looked sleeker and smoother. And they were just doing all these little tweaks to her face that when the advertisement finally showed up, the final result of that, it was like a completely different person. It was like a game changer for me because it was like, oh, so the way beauty has been presented, the traditional view of beauty, that's also fake, right? That doesn't actually represent the whole world. And then they came out with like other advertisements where they showed women of all different body shapes and all different skin colors and all different hair types and just like showing the whole range of what beauty really is. And for me, that was like, I was like, oh, so I don't have to look like what my family said that I needed to look like. And actually, there's a lot of women in the world that look like this. It was kind of this moment of like, I feel like I belong more, that I can finally see myself as more beautiful than like maybe what I didn't feel like before. And I think ever since then, it's been this really kind of slow and steady evolution of larger models. Like, Rihanna came out with her beauty Fenty, where there was like 40 or 50 shades of foundation. So like every skin color was addressed. And I just think there's been a lot of movement and strength and voice in the fact that there is no one type of beauty. There's no one beautiful. It's everyone is beautiful. And so that for me is kind of where I'm at now. But what's interesting is I still have tension with how my parents raised me of what beauty is. And so I battle with it all the time, even to this day, of like, do I let my grays hang out? Oh no, I gained 5 pounds this last couple of weeks. I was having a little fun, and now I need to reel it back because I need to get back to this weight that, I find in my own head, this is where my parents would accept me. So there's this really interesting tension of generationally what's embedded in you versus like how I feel the world is kind of evolving and being much more inclusive. And so it's still a battle for me, but I'm hoping it's not like that as we continue moving forward and that people view beauty much more broadly.
Yeah. You're also, I mean, that's such a beautiful summary and sentiment and sort of like arc of the path that you've been on. So thank you for sharing that with us. I feel like it's really vulnerable, and beauty feels vulnerable, like the way that we all see ourselves sort of reflected in this or not. I guess I'm also curious how gender has played into that arc. I think that, we're talking a lot about women in this conversation already, which makes me really happy, but I really do want to be gender inclusive about like the way that we think of and look about these products, right? Do you feel like that arc of like relating to womanhood and gender has also been expanding as you think about where beauty belongs?
Oh, completely. I mean, I think now that people feel like they can be more themselves and not so afraid of kind of sharing who they are, whether you're transgender or you identify with another. Yeah, I mean, I think it's opened up and people are much more accepting of it. And so when we design products at Helen of Troy, we're not thinking necessarily gender. We're thinking like, how do we design tools and devices that enable someone to achieve the look that they want with more ease and fluidity, and therefore that they feel good. It always comes down to like, how can we make them feel good? And I think ultimately at the end, it's like beauty is really about kind of an energy that you exude. Is how does one feel? Like, do you have this glowing light, or are you feeling kind of gray and it's a gloomy day for you? So we're hoping that in the devices and how we design our products, that they enable women and men, whoever, to feel like they can just achieve, a look that they feel good about. And then they can go about their day or their event or go on a date or meet their partner or just feel good for themselves. That's kind of the ultimate goal, is just to make people feel great.
So Helen of Troy is a company that's been around for a long time. These are relatively new ideas for us as a society. So how has it been for them to adapt to how people are thinking about beauty today?
The brands that are under beauty, like Revlon, Hot Tools, Drybar, Curlsmith, they're actually hitting quite a large range of women and men.
Cool.
So you have like lower priced products that people can get at Target, Walmart, wherever. And then you have maybe more exclusive brands like Hot Tools and Drybar that where people want a very specific tool for a very specific look.
Sure.
And then you have Curlsmith, like women who have really curly hair. A same woman, but yeah, women and men have curly hair.
We can just accept, all the people. Yeah.
All the people. And a lot of the research that we do, let's say for Curlsmith, is around women who have really wavy or curly hair. How do we serve them? Like, what are their pain points? So like, for example, like if you have really curly, coily hair, let's say you're on day 2 or 3 and you just want to like keep your curly look, but you just need a bit of a touch up. What kind of products help you get that quick touch up so that you can walk out with your natural hair and feel and look great? So I feel like with kind of all the brands that are housed under beauty is to make sure that we can be as inclusive as we can of all the different range of hair types and demographics.
Yeah.
What is the tension in exploring that user journey? Because beauty can be both something that you experience for yourself, but it can also feel like something you perform for other people. So when you encounter someone who has naturally really textured hair, and there are days where maybe by their choice, they want to smooth out the texture of their hair and wear it straight and flat or something, and that is totally an aesthetic choice, and they might not want to do it every day. But what if this next day comes up and they both want to look that way for other people, but they want to feel like, I actually don't want to put all that work in, and I'd actually just rather wear my hair natural because it's more comfortable and takes less time or something. And so one version is doing this for other people and one version is doing it for themselves. How do you suss that out in the research and decide what to offer them or what to design for them?
Wow, that is such a very thoughtful question. So the trend at the moment are actually tools that offer different attachments because women have this desire to have these different looks. And every day is kind of a new day where you wake up feeling differently. Yeah, like there's some days where you're like, I just want to feel good for myself and I don't want to fuss. And then there's other days where like, okay, I'm going to have some event or something to do and I want to look good, not just for myself, but I want to look good in front of others. So a lot of the I guess the thinking that we're doing is actually providing versatility in the tools. So it's not like you just pay a price for just one thing, but you pay a price for having options.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that, you're not going to feel the same every day. And your goals for that day and who you're going to be around versus how you want to feel, those are all going to be kind of ever flowing and changing. So the tools that you'll see coming out of these brands, or pretty much every brand in the market nowadays, will have different attachments, different options, like just blow drying, or maybe you want to seal your hair or style your hair. You want to curl your hair, you want to straighten your hair, you want to create a blowout look, you want to give yourself like a little flip on the ends. So just really thinking through like what that full range could be and what we could offer in every tool to kind of address kind of what you said, like meet the feeling that you have when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah, that feels like a really good fit, right? It's like it gives you this whole like range of personalities that you get to inhabit.
Yeah, it's like having a closet full of different wigs and you can kind of pick and choose. It's in that same sort of, you can choose all these different kind of attachments to help you get the end result that you want.
That's cool. That's kind of like the best version of makeup too, is when it just like allows you to have a really wide range of like fun exploration you get to do.
Exactly.
Wow. How do you feel like your relationship with beauty has developed over time in each of these different roles you've had, working with people in general, women specifically? You're seeing them use your product, you're being impacted maybe by the way that it lands in the market. What has sort of shifted, even in the last 5 years, if you want to make it more close to you?
I think as every project that I work on, or or even before Helen of Troy, working with, different companies, I think every time I dig deep into their users and understand what their needs are, it makes you much more compassionate. Like you kind of feel like, okay, we're just all the same, really, at the end of the day. We're not all so different. Like the essential need or the core need is all the same. We just want to feel loved and feel good, feel accepted.
Yeah.
Feel like you can get through your day without so much hardship, So I feel like almost like having these different perspectives or category areas or different products, I'm just realizing it's really the common thread is like just a basic human, a sense of belonging, feeling seen and accepted. It's kind of all the same. So I don't know, it makes me just a kinder, more compassionate person, just more easygoing in a sense. Like I get it. I don't know if that answered your question, but I guess
it does. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's such a nice response. It made me happy.
You know what it is? I feel gentle. I feel more gentle towards myself and also towards others because it's like we share the same thing, the same need or same desire. And then it makes me feel as well like, okay, I'm not so different. Like we're all uniquely special, but our needs are all the same. So it makes me feel like I just have a gentler perspective on life.
I mean, I think that's kind of what I was reacting to earlier too. Like this industry can be such a dominant force, right? Like we are taught so much from so young about the way that we need to perform it. But it is also on the flip side, very, very tender and personal and about just like us caring for ourselves, feeling good, feeling a positive relationship with self and like the way that we get to present, right? And so it's like very split in the two ways that it can sort of show up in your life.
Totally. And for me, like beauty is all about the person or the story or the thing behind it. It's like, I guess we can look at something objectively and be like, that's very aesthetically pleasing. That's beautiful. But really, like it's something that's not beautiful could actually be quite beautiful. Like that imperfect can be seen as perfect. I'm thinking of that Japanese art form, kintsugi.
Yeah.
Where you have a bowl or some pottery that, let's say, breaks into little pieces. And instead of like throwing them away, you use that like gold powder glue to piece and mend all the pieces back into its original form. But then what you have is actually something way more beautiful, right? Like you have that form, but then you have all these gold kind of seams. And so it's like that imperfect became even more beautiful. Yeah, I guess, the way I see something beautiful isn't just only kind of objectively, but it's like, what is the spirit or the intention or the story or the maker behind it? Like, where is it going to live? All of that, like, makes something feel much more, rich and beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned this overarching effect of working in beauty to your own outlook on it to make you think more kindly and more gently about all of us and that it kind of brings us together. And that's a really wonderful sort of like maybe common thread to pull through all of the work that you've done. But the places that you worked are vastly different in size and scale. How do you feel the impact was different, or maybe the way you worked was different, even though you had some of the similar perspective from what you were doing?
Well, if I were to start on the more practical end, I think regardless of company size and product, the design process is always the same or similar. Maybe in a startup, it's a little bit more, it can move a little bit faster in some ways, and you're wearing different hats and, come to kind of decision points in a more like interactive, more fluid way.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like maybe where I'm working now, where it's more corporate, you just have a lot of different groups and disciplines that are coming from different angles and different timelines and different kind of budget pressures and marketing goals. So it's different from kind of a smaller kind of startup to like a larger corporation. But the design process is always the same, which is really messy and very, very dynamic and very kind of driven by user experience. I think at the heart of it, it's always driven by user experience. Like, what is good for the user? What are their needs?
Is there also a difference in the outcome of the products, like their impact, their life cycle, and things like that?
There's definitely a difference in all of that, because I would say with a larger company, they have kind of just more in the game already. So it's in a way, it's easier for them to, it's easier and it's harder. It's like, it's easier in a way to bring a product to market because you already have that brand established, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then it just becomes like how challenging or how complex is the product that we want to launch, and, kind of meeting all these different requirements. So that part could be a bit challenging, but it's easier to kind of bring a product if you already have a brand developed. With these startups, on the flip side, I mean, I think the reason why I love working with startups so much is because they're so passionate and committed. And they're also incredibly nimble, and they're smart, and they will take risks that sometimes corporations can't always do, right? But with that, that means a lot of them might not make it out into the world.
Sure.
Or they do, but they need more funding. And then they have to kind of refocus into how can we raise more money so that we can develop this next part of the product or design experience. So that's the challenging part with working with startups. But the greatest part of working with startups is that they are just so focused and passionate, and they can work very, very quickly, and, and they are willing to take risks, which is so refreshing, because I think a little part of designers, you want to feel a bit of a thrill, not that you want to take a dangerous risk, but that you are acting upon your gut and your intuition, and not always cross-checking it with numbers or market competitors or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Maybe a little of that rebellious spirit you mentioned before.
Yeah, it's like, don't you feel that designers are a bit rebellious? Because that's part of design. It's like, how do you emotionally connect with your user?
Yeah.
Right? Or how do you create like an iconic or differentiated product? So there is a little bit of rebel in I think all designers.
Yeah.
It feels like gut, but it also feels like just really, really attentive to the user without any of the other stuff that kind of gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and the user are sort of like making this leap of faith together because you really can like feel the issue.
Yes. Yeah, it's like I do find that with startups, you just have less boundaries between the two. Mm-hmm. So that if a user says it's so important that it has this, then the next day, like in the room, we're like, okay, this user said this. How do we make this happen? Yeah. And it's not necessarily like in the corporate world, that's not happening. It's just there's a lot more to consider. So it's not happening as fluidly or as quickly or as dynamically. It's a little bit more considered in a different way. Whereas you could be a bit more reactive and a little bit more quick to assess and quick to discuss in a smaller, newer, younger company.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that being said, you're a year in, and so you still have probably a long runway of like seeing where this goes. But what were you hoping it would feel like to be at a company the size of Helen of Troy and sort of like think about this scale of impact you could have? What do you imagine that is already or will grow into?
That it's a great question, and I don't know, but that was definitely what drew me. And looking back at like the choices I made in my career, they're all actually very different.
Yeah.
Like I started off at IDEO, which was an incredible consulting agency and really just had an incredible culture, and I loved working there. And then I just felt this itch to get like my hands touching material and fabric and textiles. And I wanted to make something three-dimensional from something that was two-dimensional. And I loved that. And I learned a lot starting that business. And then working with startups was also kind of happened naturally. And then I really fell in love with that. And then I was just really curious about the corporate world. I'm like, what is it like to just work on a product that's mass? You know, it's just large quantities and there's just a lot. I don't know. I just was curious. I actually didn't know. And I think it was just out of curiosity and liking the brands that they embodied. And it just felt like a great next challenge. So I don't know, to be addressed, to be determined as I continue there.
I mean, it seems like the type of place where the impact scale takes longer. So it kind of makes sense that you don't know what that feels like all the way yet.
Yeah.
But I wish that, I mean, I feel like young designers ask so often about like, should I go to a consultancy or like in-house, and these very specific questions. And you're such a great example of like, if you just stick to the values and sort of the core principles of the type of thing you want to make, all of those like industry decisions about like what scale to be at or exactly those kind of can come secondary.
I mean, the worst thing is to do something that you don't have your full heart in. And so if you don't believe in it, it's pretty hard to like be your best version of yourself. You just can't do it if your heart isn't in it. So I feel like for any younger designer starting out, to not think so, I mean, of course you have to consider like what company or where or what city or, you know, those things, logistical things, those larger things, but at the heart is really your heart. Like, where's your heart at? Like, what aligns with your values? What aligns with your interests? What is your gut saying? Like, what are you just more interested in working on? Because if you're interested in working on it, then you're going to do your very best.
I don't want to say it's rare to talk to a designer that's like so in it on like their specified expertise and topic, but talking to you about beauty, you've been in it for the whole game. Like, you know, as we all have been starting from a young age, but you're here to make changes. You're here to do things about it. And so we started to talk a little bit about the future of Helen of Troy, but maybe we can turn that to you just personally because you're still here working on beauty and you still care about it. We talked to you before we decided to record this episode, and you mentioned that you think about beauty differently also in regards to your daughter and like your family, and that is like a future way of thinking. What has been your messaging for her as you've been working on these products and as she's been growing up?
Oh my gosh, this one will make me cry.
That's okay.
Because I just don't want her to go through the same amount of personal torture because you feel like you're not what you're supposed to be.
Right.
So, or you're not beautiful. So when I think about her even having a thought that she's not beautiful, it like destroys me. So my whole way I want to make sure that I shape the communication and just the attitude around beauty is to just always make her feel like she is beautiful, lovely, wonderful, who she needs to be. She is absolutely enough. So in my household, I do not allow any talk about your weight, even though my husband and I are like obsessed about our weight. And so we will talk about it, you know, in our room privately to ourselves, like, oh, we need to exercise, you know, I feel like I'm feeling a little icky. And so we'll have that kind of talk, but in front of the kids, absolutely not. We don't talk about weight. And both my kids are a little bit on the taller side and, you know, body, I guess, composition, they're just a little bit more athletic built. And so a lot of people or parents will say to us, like, wow, your kids are really big. And it really kind of irks me. And I'm always like, I never, you know, say anything in response but I just kind of roll with it. But I don't actually want to instill that sort of dialogue or verbiage with them. I want them to just not think of themselves as like big or small or skinny or large or whatever it is. It's just like, they're just who they are and everyone is different. So very much, I'm very conscious of how I communicate around my children when it comes to body appearance, skin color. And, you know, for them, they'll ask me, oh, someone is darker, someone is, you know, this color or whatever. And it's teaching them like, there's actually a lot of different colors in the world. There's a lot of different sizes. Everyone looks different. There's a lot of different cultures. The world is huge and everyone is the same. We're actually all the same. So that's the kind of style and conversation and communication that I'm working on and have, you know, and my husband's on the same page and my nanny is as well. So we all are kind of on the same team with that.
That's really nice. Wish my parents knew about that when I was growing up.
I know. And that's the part that's actually, in a way, it's like when I hear that, it's like normalized, right? And then it's a little bit painful for me too when, you know, I hear that from you because it's like I can only imagine all the internal talk, that you might have with your own self, and not feeling good or whatever that may be. And it's like, it shouldn't be that way, which I think it is changing.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that it's changing. So I don't think that will be so prominent, in the next decades.
Yeah. I think it's really encouraging to hear the shift that you've established, especially when you give us a little bit of context about the way that you were spoken to when you were a child, right? But I also just love that you're not directly doing it, but that you're not modeling it. For me, I have like a fairly loving mom who didn't like intentionally put any down comments on my appearance. But if she was berating herself in a regular way in front of me, that's the behavior I'm going to learn,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it sounds like you're being really intentional.
I just realized as you said that I made my parents sound like these like mean.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. You don't need to apologize. It's not you. It's just me recognizing that. See, the thing is, I think anyone that might come from a similar type of upbringing or culture would just know that it's not that your parents don't love you. They actually love you so much that they want you to be perfect in the only way that they know or grew up in. And my parents, oddly now, especially with my dad who has dementia, he actually will say to me how beautiful I am every time I see him, which is not what I grew up. I know, but he wasn't like that. He was a scary Korean father. But now that he has dementia and he can't remember when he saw me last, and every time he sees me is so surprised that he's seeing me. And he always tells me I'm beautiful. And so it's just this really interesting kind of, I don't know, contrast of like growing up when in that sort of dialogue with my parents and dynamic. And then now they're older and they're so accepting. They're like, dress however you want, wear, like, do whatever you want. We believe in you. We love you just as you are. And I wish that was more how I felt when I was younger. So I don't know what happened with them either, but they've also shifted.
Maybe they feel like they succeeded. They're like, we passed on what we needed to. You killed it. And now
maybe I'll keep thinking that. That's a good thought. But yeah, they're so much. They're great parents who did their very best, and it's nice that they have a different way of speaking about beauty with me in the older age.
That's nice. In the interest of time, should we move towards our last question?
Yeah. For each season of the podcast, we basically have one question that we ask every guest so that we can have like a fun sort of benchmark of how everybody adds into it.
Yeah.
And the question this season is looking at the 10 principles for good design from Dieter Rams.
Oh, yeah.
We wanted to like rethink or amend or add on to sort of what we think are important principles of design now. So I think that Ginger is sending you the list.
Cheat sheet.
And you can reference that or not, or just say a principle that you think is really relevant. But yeah, what do you think is a principle of good design that you would love to add to the list?
Wow, that's a really great one. Dieter Rams 10. I remember learning these.
I know.
In school.
I mean, that's kind of the thing where they're so good. They're great principles, but we also we have them so baked in, and design has come a long way. I think we can get some new perspectives in there.
I think one that's kind of missing is good design is the story behind the design.
And can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's kind of the example I was sharing earlier about the Japanese art form, the kintsugi, that in one regard, yes, you can kind of look at something and be like, that is very beautiful. That's lovely. That's objectively pleasing. But what really makes for great design is the story behind it. So who was that designer or creator and why? It's kind of the why in the design.
Yeah.
Like, what is the goal of the design? What's the intention? What good will it serve in the world? Yeah. That's another one too. Like, good design provides goodness in the world or in some small or large way. So I don't know if that's one or two, but yeah, good design is the story behind the design, or good design is good. It adds good in the world.
It's kind of amazing that you're finishing out this episode like that, because this is sort of our last episode of season 3, at least in terms of interviewing guests. And that's the question that we've been trying to answer throughout the season of if like good intention and good design is good impact. Yeah, so it's fitting to know that that's how you think about it.
Yeah, very strongly. And I love that. It's good impact.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We always want to ask our guests, if it's okay for people that listen to the podcast to reach out to you, and what the best way to do that would be if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much. You can, I guess...
LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best.
Great. Angie Kim on LinkedIn, and we are the Beyond Ray podcast. You can find our Instagram at wid_Seattle. Thanks as always for listening.